Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something quite interesting. We're diving into two forces that are just worlds apart, really.
Absolutely. You've got on one side this incredibly deep current of history, cultural memory, things stretching back centuries.
Like almost geological timescales. And then, bam, the other side is these super urgent, like right now, geopolitical flashpoints.
Yeah, high frequency stuff, conflicts evolving daily, where big ideas like sovereignty, dissent, human rights, they're all being renegotiated as we speak.
So it's a real contrast for you to get your head around. We're talking the speed of family tradition versus, well, the speed of a diplomatic cable.
Or a sudden extradition, things with immediate, very real consequences.
Our mission today is to take the sources we've gathered on this and pull out the key insights from, well, both of these worlds.
We'll start in Mexico, I think. There's this amazing blend of joy and remembrance.
Right, and then we'll pivot to some really high-stakes diplomatic maneuvering, North Africa, East Africa, a lot going on.
Okay, let's start with that deep power of tradition then.
So first up, Day of the Dead, Dia de Muertos, every November 2nd. And the key thing here, it's not about sadness, is it?
Not at all. It's fundamentally a celebration. It comes from this belief that loved ones, they get to come home for just one night, a sacred night.
And that belief, it drives this really careful physical preparation. Families create altars.
Right, these homemade offerings. They're meant to guide the spirits back, make them feel welcome, so you have candles lighting the way.
And their favorite food and drinks. It's like hosting them again. Real hospitality for the departed.
Exactly. And the sources, they give these wonderful little human details.
Yeah, like Margarita Sanchez shopping for her altar items.
Yeah.
She says she puts out a beer, a Coke, a cigarette, a little of everything just in case.
Haha, yeah, just in case. It tells you it's not some, abstract ritual. It's personal, it's practical, it's, well, loving.
And right at the heart of these altars are the calaveritas, the little sugar skulls.
Oh, yes, the skull. And what's really interesting, we heard from Adrian Chavarria, his family's been making these since the 40s.
Wow, long time.
Yeah, and he says most customers, they don't actually buy them to eat.
Really, they look like candy.
They are, mostly sugar, chocolate, sometimes amaranth, maybe nuts or honey. But their main job, decoration. They're offerings for the altar, for the person being remembered.
So they're artisan sweets, but with this deep symbolic purpose. And that history, it takes us way back, doesn't it? Connects to that deep memory we talked about.
Absolutely. The roots are in ancient Mesoamerica. The Aztecs, for instance, they made figures from amaranth and honey as offerings to their gods.
Okay, so it predates the Spanish.
It does. Then the Spanish arrive in the 16th century. They bring sugar, new ways of molding things, and that blends with the existing practices. It evolves into these colorful skulls.
It's a real synthesis.
Yeah.
But there's a difference from the original offerings, right? I think the historian Jesus Lopez del Rio mentioned this.
Yes, a crucial difference. He points out that pre-Hispanic offerings, they weren't home altars like today. They were for entities beyond the human realm.
So more communal, less personal.
And involving different things, food, yes, but also blood, animals, songs, prayers. The modern home altar is really its own thing, more intimate, domestic, focused on personal memory.
It really shows how culture can adapt, absorb new things, but keep the core idea alive, honoring the dead.
And speaking of that Spanish influence, that legacy, it brings us right up to the present day. There's been a huge diplomatic development this week.
Connecting the past and present directly. Spain and its history in Mexico.
Exactly. These historical wounds, they're still very much active politically. Spain's foreign minister, José Manuel Albares, he actually officially acknowledged the suffering and injustice.
Caused by the conquistadors, you mean?
Yeah.
Back in the 1500s and during the colonial centuries.
Yes, the conquest from 1519 to 1521 and the 300 years after. Albares said, quote, "There was injustice, and it is merely right and fair to acknowledge and deplore this."
That sounds significant. How was it received in Mexico?
President Claudia Sheinbaum called it the first step. A step in the right direction, she said, adding that an apology like this actually shows true greatness.
And this is powerful because Mexico asked for this before, didn't they, under the previous president?
That's right. López Obrador asked back in 2019. But Spain's government and King Felipe VI, they rejected it then, flat out. It really strained relations.
So this is a complete turnaround.
Yeah.
Acknowledging centuries of, well, damage.
It is, but we should also note it's not universally accepted within Spain.
Oh, pushback?
Yeah, the leader of the Conservative Popular Party, Alberto Núñez Feixó, He came out saying he's not going to be ashamed of my country's history.
So even something from 500 years ago is still a live political issue today? Wow.
It shows how differently political memory and cultural memory operate, doesn't it? One shifts declaration by declaration, the other persists generation after generation.
That's a great point. And it leads us right into these other global situations where things are shifting incredibly fast, sometimes creating new issues around rights and sovereignty. Okay, let's pivot to those urgent flashpoints. Starting with the Western Sahara. Big news from the UN Security Council this week.
Yes, they approved a resolution, backed by the U.S., that supports Morocco's claim over the disputed territory.
Okay, refresh this quickly. Western Sahara, former Spanish colony, right?
Yeah.
Claims by Morocco, but also by the Polisario Front.
Exactly. Morocco controls most of it. It's rich in phosphates. The Polisario Front wants independence and is based in refugee camps in Algeria. That's the core conflict.
And the UN position is usually involved a referendum on self-determination.
Traditionally, yes. A referendum that included independence as one possible outcome. That's what Polisario, Algeria, Russia, China generally supported. That was the baseline.
So what's changed in this new resolution?
This is the fascinating part. It's about what's missing. The resolution talks about Morocco's plan, genuine autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty, calling it the most feasible solution.
Okay.
But crucially, unlike previous resolutions, it makes no mention of a referendum that includes independence, that option. Just gone from the text.
Whoa. So just leaving that out, that's the big signal, even if the resolution technically just renews the peacekeeping mission, minor so?
Precisely. Renewing the mission is routine. The shift is in the political goal the UN is now backing, even by omission. It's effectively sidelining one side's core demand independence and endorsing Morocco's preferred outcome.
That's a huge diplomatic win for Morocco then.
Absolutely. And the Polisario Front's reaction was immediate. They vowed not to participate in any process that aims to, in their words, legitimize Morocco's occupation. So the UN is promoting a path that one key party completely rejects.
A major shift in the sands, quite literally.
And if we're talking about contested rights and shifting norms, we absolutely have to look at this case involving Abdul Rahman al-Qaradawi.
Right, the Egyptian-Turkish poet and activist. This story is, well, it's chilling.
It really is. He was jailed in the UAE for over 10 months. The reason? A social media post critical of the Emirati, Egyptian, and Saudi government.
It's just a post. And he ended up imprisoned in the UAE. How did that even happen? He's not Emirati, right?
No. He was actually arrested in Lebanon back in December 2024. Then very quickly extradited to the UAE in early January. He's not a citizen of Lebanon either.
So Lebanon arrested him and sent him to the UAE. On what grounds?
This is key. The UAE circulated an arrest warrant through something called the Arab Interior Ministers' Council.
Okay, what's that?
It's essentially a regional security pact. It lets member states quickly share intelligence and enforce arrest warrants across borders for things like, quote, fake news or disturbing public security. It bypasses slower, standard extradition processes.
Wow. So a fast track for cross-border arrests based on these kinds of vague charges. That seems incredibly open to abuse.
Rights groups certainly think so. And the speed, the mechanism, it's alarming. An individual taken across borders based on charges that seem highly political.
And his detention conditions? Are they known?
They sound severe. His lawyer, Rodney Dixon, filed a complaint to the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture. He alleges over 10 months in solitary confinement, no sunlight, no lawyer access, no official charges filed against him. Dixon argues this amounts to torture.
That raises serious questions about accountability. What about Lebanon's role? Did they just hand him over?
The previous government did, yes. They apparently dismissed concerns from groups like Amnesty International. They relied on a promise from the UAE that his human rights would be respected.
A promise that seems to have been broken immediately.
Clearly. Dixon argues the current Lebanese government still has a legal duty under international law to try and get him back, to fix the situation. State obligations don't just vanish when governments change.
It really highlights the danger, doesn't it? If governments can coordinate like this to grab critics across borders just for what they post online, what's the broader implication?
It sets a chilling precedent, as rights groups call it. The potential for these security pacts to hunt down dissidents anywhere, regardless of citizenship or where the criticism happened.
And Qaradawi himself, he had a history of activism.
Yes, he'd supported pro-democracy movements in Egypt. Sources also note he supported Hamas, praising the October 7th attack. It shows that people with political profiles are definitely the targets here.
It feels like a way to instantly erase a political voice, a political memory. Which takes us to another situation where political outcomes seem contested. Tanzania.
Yes, the recent election there. Another flashpoint, but this one involves claims of repression masking itself as a legitimate win.
President Samia Suluhu Hassan declared the winner, right? A landslide.
Huge landslide, over 97% of the vote, supposedly, with turnout apparently near 87%, which is incredibly high, secures another 5 years for the ruling CCM party.
But this wasn't a smooth election. The sources talk about turmoil, violence.
Significant turmoil, violent protests, clashes. You had demonstrators tearing down banners, setting fires, police responding with tear gas, even gunfire. The narrative of this overwhelming victory clashes hard with the reality on the ground.
And where did the anger come from? Was it just about the result?
It seems to stem from repression before the vote, too. The two main challengers were disqualified.
Disqualified.
Tunjulusu, from the main opposition party Chadema, he was hit with treason and cybercrime charges. Luhaga Mpina, another key opposition figure, also disqualified. So Hassan was left facing only minor opponents.
That sounds like clearing the field, using legal means to remove political competition.
It's a common tactic, yes. And rights groups, Amnesty, a UN panel, they documented a pattern of human rights abuses leading up to the election. Things like enforced disappearances, over 200 cases reported since 2019, arbitrary arrests, too.
200 enforced disappearances, that's terrifying.
It paints a very grim picture, and the violence during the protests was serious. The opposition claimed hundreds were killed. The government called that hugely exaggerated.
But deaths were confirmed.
The UN Human Rights Office confirmed at least 10 deaths across 3 cities related to the protests. So the election result stands. The CCM continues its long rule, but it comes alongside undeniable political violence and rights abuses.
It's another stark example of how fragile democracy can be when the system seems geared towards suppression. #outro.
So quite a journey in this deep dive. We went from those incredibly detailed, handcrafted calaveritas in Mexico.
We're making them starts in April for sales in October, carrying on a family tradition going back, 500 years in its roots.
Exactly. All the way to these immediate high-stakes government decisions, UN resolutions, redefining sovereignty, redefining freedom of expression right now.
Yeah, we saw Spain taking that first step, as President Sheinbaum put it, facing up to a centuries-old injustice.
While at the same time, you see international bodies moving so fast they potentially bypass human rights safeguards or sideline entire political movements.
So for you listening, gaining that quick, thorough knowledge means holding both these things in mind, doesn't it? The sheer endurance of tradition.
Binding families, keeping memories alive across generations.
And then the sheer speed of geopolitics. How quickly things can change, destabilize regions, even erase individual rights sometimes.
Which brings us back to that core contrast, memory. Remember Emmanuel Chavarria, who's inheriting the sugar skull business?
Yeah.
He said that in each calaverita, his family's memory prevails. It lives on.
Okay, so here's our final thought for you to chew on. How does that kind of deep cultural memory, this powerful belief that the past, the loved ones, they will return, they will be honored, how does that stand up against or maybe even resist these newer forms of transnational political power we're seeing?
Because the flip side is the reality we saw in, say, the Qaradawi case, where a person's memory, their voice, their future, it can seemingly be wiped out or completely redefined by a security pact over a single social media post.
So which memory wins out in the end? The cultural, the deeply personal, or the political, the state-controlled? Which one proves more resilient when faced with erasure?
Something powerful to ponder.
Indeed. That's all we have time for in this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.